The phone call came at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I stared at that glowing clock for what felt like hours afterward, wishing I could turn it back. The voice on the other end was professional, gentle, but direct. "Mrs. Patterson, this is St. Mary's Hospital. Your daughter Jennifer has been in a serious car accident. She's in critical condition. You need to come now." Those words hit me like a physical blow. You know that feeling when your world tilts sideways and nothing makes sense anymore? That's where I lived for the next 3 months. I'm 63 years old. I've buried both my parents, survived my husband's heart attack, and raised 3 children through every crisis you can imagine. I thought I knew what fear looked like. I was wrong. Jennifer is my middle child, 32 years old, and the one I worried about least. She had her life together in ways that amazed me. A successful marketing career, a beautiful home in Maple Ridge, married to Tom for 6 years. From my perspective as her mother, she was thriving. Her older brother struggled with addiction for years. Her younger sister went through a messy divorce. But Jennifer was my success story. That's probably why I missed all the signs. Looking back now, I can see them clearly. The phone calls that became shorter and less frequent, her voice sounding hollow when we talked, like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. The canceled family dinners because she was swamped at work. The weight loss I noticed during her last visit home, which she brushed off as a new fitness routine. The dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. You know that feeling when something's off but you can't put your finger on it? I had that feeling for months, but I pushed it down. I told myself she was just busy, just stressed with work, just being an adult with adult responsibilities. I didn't want to be one of those mothers who pried too much. God, how I wish I had pried. The drive to the hospital that night was a blur of empty streets and racing thoughts. Tom had called me right after the hospital did, his voice broken in a way I'd never heard before. "She was driving alone," he kept saying. "She was supposed to be home hours ago. I should have gone looking for her sooner." I found him in the waiting room, slumped in a plastic chair with his head in his hands. When he looked up at me, I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just fear, it was guilt. "Where is she?" I asked, and he led me down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and despair. The ICU doors required a badge to enter, and the nurse who let us in had that practiced compassion that healthcare workers develop when they deal with tragedy every day. Nothing could have prepared me for seeing Jennifer in that bed. My vibrant, capable daughter was unconscious, connected to more machines than I could count. Her face was swollen from the impact, her beautiful brown hair matted with dried blood they hadn't completely cleaned away. The steady beeping of monitors provided a soundtrack to my heartbreak. "The car hit a tree," Tom whispered beside me. "She wasn't speeding. There was no ice on the road. The police think she fell asleep at the wheel, but—" His voice trailed off. That's when Dr. Rodriguez entered the room and changed everything I thought I knew about my daughter's life. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, and she delivered devastating news like she was offering comfort. "Your daughter has been our patient before," she said carefully. "Not here in the ICU, but in our mental health clinic. She's been seeing Dr. Kim for depression and anxiety for the past 8 months." The words hit me like another car accident. Depression? Anxiety? My Jennifer? The daughter who always had everything under control? Tom's face crumpled. "I wanted her to tell you," he said. "I begged her to tell you, but she was so ashamed. She didn't want to worry anyone. You know that feeling when you realize you've been looking at a picture that's been upside down your whole life? Everything I thought I knew about Jennifer shifted into a different focus. The canceled dinners weren't about work. The weight loss wasn't about fitness. The hollow voice wasn't about being busy. My daughter had been drowning, and I hadn't even noticed she was underwater. Dr. Rodriguez explained that Jennifer had started therapy after what she called a significant loss. It took another hour of gentle questioning before Tom finally told me the whole truth. 2 years ago, Jennifer had been pregnant. She miscarried at 12 weeks, a devastating loss that she decided to handle privately. She didn't want to upset anyone, Tom said, tears streaming down his face. Your family had just gone through so much with Robert's rehab and Lisa's divorce. She said she didn't want to add to the burden. So she carried that grief alone. She and Tom mourned their unborn child in isolation, and when the sadness wouldn't lift, when it settled into her bones like a winter that wouldn't end, she found Dr. Kim. She started medication. She went to therapy every Tuesday at 4 p.m., telling me she had late meetings. The night of the accident, she'd had a panic attack while driving home from one of those sessions, the kind that makes your chest tight and your vision narrow, the kind that makes you pull over, except she didn't have time. She was fighting to breathe, fighting to see clearly, fighting demons I didn't even know existed. The tree she hit probably saved her life. If she'd kept driving, if she'd made it to the highway in that state, the outcome could have been so much worse. I spent the next 5 days living in that ICU waiting room, taking turns with Tom to sit beside her bed. I talked to her unconscious form for hours, telling her stories from her childhood, reminding her of family vacations and birthday parties and all the moments when she'd been purely, simply happy. On the 6th day, she opened her eyes. The first thing she said was, "I'm sorry." Not "where am I" or "what happened," but "I'm sorry." That's when I knew how deep her pain really went. Recovery was slow and complicated. The physical injuries healed faster than the emotional ones. Jennifer was embarrassed that we all knew about her struggles now. She felt like she'd failed us somehow, like being depressed was a character flaw rather than an illness. We had conversations during those hospital weeks that we should have had years earlier, about how our family had always been strong by handling things alone, about how asking for help felt like admitting defeat, about how I'd raised her to be independent to a fault. I didn't want to be a burden, she told me one afternoon, and I felt my heart break all over again. Honey, I said, you could never be a burden. You're my daughter. Your pain is my pain. Your struggles are my struggles. That's not a burden, that's love. Tom opened up too, about how helpless he'd felt watching his wife disappear into sadness, how he'd tried to fix her instead of just supporting her, how he'd felt like he was failing as a husband because he couldn't make her happy again. The three of us learned together that mental health isn't something you handle alone, and it's not something you fix with good intentions. It's something you manage with professional help, family support, and honest communication. Jennifer came home after 3 weeks in the hospital. She continued with Dr. Kim, and we started family therapy too. It was uncomfortable at first, learning new ways to talk to each other, learning to ask, "How are you really doing?" instead of just, "How are you?" I started seeing a counselor myself, working through my own guilt and learning to recognize the signs I'd missed. We created new family traditions around checking in meaningfully, not just exchanging updates about work and weather. The hardest part was accepting that I couldn't protect my children from everything, including their own minds. The best part was discovering that we could face these challenges together instead of in isolation. Jennifer returned to work with accommodations for her mental health. She takes medication without shame now. She goes to therapy like she goes to the dentist. Regular maintenance for her well-being. Our family talks openly about mental health, and we've become advocates in our community. 6 months after the accident, Jennifer told me she was grateful it happened. Not grateful for the pain or the fear, but grateful that it forced us all to be honest about what was really going on. I was dying slowly, she said. The accident just made it visible. Today, 3 years later, Jennifer is thriving in ways that go beyond her career and her beautiful house. She's authentically happy, not just successfully functional. She and Tom are talking about trying for another baby, with full family support this time. You know that feeling when you wish you could go back and do things differently? I live with that sometimes, but mostly I'm grateful we got a second chance. Not every family does. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, if you're worried about an adult child who seems distant or different, don't explain it away like I did. Ask the hard questions. Create safe spaces for difficult conversations. Be willing to be uncomfortable if it means your child doesn't have to be alone. Mental health affects entire families, but it's something we can face together. The strongest thing my daughter ever did wasn't handling her depression alone. It was letting us help her carry it. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the most important conversations we'll ever have. I never expected to find my daughter alone and fading in the ICU, but I'm grateful that night led us to find each other in ways we never had before.